Greetings gamers, my name is Anto and welcome to another world building stream. What we do in these streams is we work on my brand new campaign setting, Sunscar, the Radiant Crown. This is a setting that I'm putting together for a potential West Marches style campaign that I'm looking to do in the future, and I thought that I would stream the process of putting together the map, putting together the world, going through the whole process of building out this setting from the ground up like I did with the Jewel Cities before it, because I know that you folks really like to see that slow build up, the nitty gritty of putting these things together. This evening we're going to be doing more world building. We might do a little bit more map making, dive into some more of the actual kind of point of interest generation stuff, and maybe do a little kind of setting guide stuff as well, and flit between the things. While we're waiting for folks to trickle in from the notifications, I'm going to make sure that the sound is coming in properly, which it is, so I can mute that again so I don't have to hear myself. While people are coming in from the notifications, say hello in the chat, and throughout the evening get involved with the chat, because this whole process is way more fun the more involved you get in the chat, the more you throw out suggestions, ask questions, the more back and forth there is. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to switch to the desktop view. Yes. So here we are in Legend Keeper, and we've got the map of Sunscar open. Actually, we can open it in Incarnate. I have the buttons to do that, so we'll open the Incarnate version. So we've got the actual direct map for this. Now, last week in the previous stream we did a bunch of map making stuff, and this looks a bit different to that, because after doing that map making stream I was looking at our progress of the map and I wasn't really happy with it, mainly with the placement of the biomes, because of where this island, the island of Sunscar, sits in my world. I was like, this doesn't really make sense with where the biomes are placed for how they would really form based on the kind of geology of the world and the kind of climate of the world. So I pulled up my climate map and rearranged some things, and broadly speaking that means that we moved the desert from being kind of this central area, moved it over to the west, kept the north as the kind of frozen area, but shrunk it down just a little bit, and then moved our kind of waterlogged, very wet, swampy region down here to the southeast. This is where most of our kind of trade winds, our prevailing winds, are going to make landfall. This is where most of our kind of moist air hits the land. So it makes sense for our kind of lush green spaces to be stacked on the east side of the island, and then as we work on placing mountains and things, there's going to be another kind of barrier of islands between the desert and this verdant land, so that we get another rain shelf that separates the desert off from the rest of the map, so that we get that natural desert placement. And then the Deadlands here, the Deadlands of Kar, they're that kind of grey, ashen waste style vibe, largely because of magic. But after doing a little bit of rearranging of things, I was much more pleased with where the biomes were sitting, started working on more mountain stuff, had a whole crash with Incarnate and lost like 2 hours worth of work. I was very bitter about that, but went back in, redid it all, it was fine. Just means that I have to be more diligent with when I'm saving. It was my own fault, because I got a warning being like, yo, this actually hasn't saved. I know you've clicked save, but I've not saved it, and I chose to close it anyway and ignore the warning, and I should have just made sure to do an offline backup, which would have solved my problems. But it's fine. The map is now changed and updated, and I've gone into Legend Keeper. So if we close out Incarnate and go back into Legend Keeper, you can see I've rearranged a bunch of the pins to reflect where they are now placed. So we've still got all of our pins for the locations, so for the desert and the Deadlands of Kar and for the Frostbreak Mountains, which are much denser now. So this whole place just to kind of represent the fact that this is a frigid landscape that comes from its elevation more than anything else. And then we've moved the Mire of Spires, which is our swampy region, kind of down to the south of our verdant east. And I think that'll work really well because there's going to be some kind of titanic creatures down here. And I like the idea of having a region that might be too high level for the players to actually be able to deal with when they first start the campaign, but a place that they can come back to and after they've been adventuring for a good period of time and after they've gone out into the wider world of Sunscar, they can come back and interact with the things close to the starting region that they had missed and that they hadn't been high enough level to be able to deal with. So we're going to be starting with them kind of in their safe town in the verdant east and kind of expanding out. So most of this eastern region will be kind of tier 1 level stuff, but then the Mire of Spires is going to be much more dangerous. Lots of titanic creatures, lots of kind of like kaiju-esque style stuff. So we've got a couple of notes down here for there being a like Shadow of the Colossus style kaiju creature that's got a dungeon like embedded in its back from when this sky city exploded and came raining down on the island. But then there's also this kind of Titanoboa that has Displacer Beast energy, so this enormous snake that can displace, and this was generated using my weird monster generator, which I'm going to have a video on pretty soon. I don't know if it'll be this coming week or the week after, but in the next couple of weeks I'm going to have a video talking all about this. It's essentially a generator that I've been building for the last like month or so that lets you build a complete monster with all of its stat blocks, but also a bunch of like weird and random stuff attached to it, so mutations and abilities, and this is one of the results from that. So it's a gargantuan serpentine beast that has a bunch of mutations. So it doesn't cast a shadow, it has extra limbs, it has like slimy skin, so it's hard to grapple, but then it has the displacement trait, so it's this huge snake that is kind of like projecting different versions of itself, and it also gets a shadowy teleport, which is just terrifying for a gargantuan creature to be able to teleport, and I really like that. So put that down in the Mire of Spires, and I like the idea that kind of the Mire of Spires and all of the region around the Womb of Elsewhere, which is this kind of nexus point for multiple magical ley lines that spawns monsters. And I like the idea that the kind of landfall around it, so we've got the island of the Whispering Web, the Mire of Spires, and then kind of this southern point here will be just filled with like bonkers monsters that have come out of the Womb of Elsewhere and crawled up onto the ground, and a lot of the creatures that will be really threatening in this campaign will kind of have emerged from the Womb of Elsewhere. Evening, JNap. You said last stream actually got me in the mood for map making, so I ended up remaking the map of the entire island where my current adventure takes place, as well as large parts of the whole continent. That's awesome. I do love a good bit of map making. It's very relaxing and therapeutic to just turn off for a few hours and just do some chill map making. I have been, since the last stream, I have been recording my bouts of doing map making because I had to essentially remake this whole map. I shifted the position a little bit, worked on some of like the southern areas, add in more of the like swampy deltas and fjords and things, changing the biomes around, working on the mountains. I took the opportunity to record that whole process, so at some point in the coming months I can have a video that is like, here is the whole process of making this map for making region maps in Incarnate, or here's just how I made the Sunscar map. Don't know what angle the video will take yet, but I have started building the kind of footage base for that. so that when we come to it, we'll have the option. So I think this evening what I want to do is start roughing in some more of the details in the map. Mainly the kind of main mountain areas, because that's most of what I lost when I couldn't save the map. And then start thinking about places where I might want to put things like lakes and rivers, and start getting some more of that solid foundation put down. So last week, one of the things that we did was we built out the height map. So if I just change the opacity on that and bring it up, you can see that we painted in a whole bunch of colors to represent the elevation of the map in relation to sea level. So blue is at sea level, purple is kind of like below sea level, or like literal sea level. Green is a little bit higher, yellow is a little bit higher still, and red is our highest points. You can see that we've put in some of the mountains to follow that, and I want to put in these two mountain ranges that separate the desert and the deadlands from the main verdant regions, and then kind of encase the desert so it does become kind of like this dust bowl. So I'm just going to drop the opacity there, and then over on the right in the layers, I've broken out the mountains into multiple different layers here. So if we zoom in a little and just turn off the height map so you can see this more easily. So I've this mountain range that goes from the Frostbreak down all the way to the Mire of Spires is 3 different mountains, I think, or 2. It's 3 different sets of mountains in 3 different layers. So we've got one which encompasses what I'm currently calling the throat, this narrow point. And if I turn that off and on, you can see that it is this predominantly green set of mountains, because they're a different set of stamps. They have a different set of kind of saturation and stuff. So I wanted to be able to edit them in one big go, separate from the ones up in the Frostbreaks, and then same with the Frostbreak mountains, being able to separate them out. And then I have mistakenly put a bunch of what should be the detail mountains in the Frostbreaks into the main one, and then there's only one little cluster that's actually detailed, but that's fine because we can move them really easily. If I go into here, what I'm looking for would be hills. Not all of the hills though, I know that. Let's have a look at these and see where's the button I'm looking for to just hide all of them at once. Or would it be easier to group them? They can stay in there for now. That's something that I don't need to do on stream. So what I want to do first of all is bring up my delete me mountains. Sorry for bumping you. So this is something that we did last week where I refed in the shape of these mountains that we want to put in using a different scale of mountains, just so it's really clear and really easy for me to see. And you can see that I've put them in for where the Deadlands and the desert kind of break up between there and the Verdant Lands, as well as this other mountain range here and a smaller one down here, and some on the Whispering Web as well. So I want to create a bunch of new layers to encompass these. I'm going to start, we'll start all the way west. So we're going to create a object layer, and then we're going to rename it, and we're going to go Mountains West. And then create another object layer and call this Mountains Desert. Will it let me get? It will let me get all of it. So that's going to be this central bit, and then this section will be Mountains South. And separating them all out like that just makes it much easier to control sizing and make changes after the fact. So we're going to go in and start in Mountains West, I think, because this is going to be very desert based and these are going to be very different stamps. So if we go into the stamp catalog, we're probably going to start with Brown Mountains, but not necessarily, because there are some desert mountains in the terrain section, these ones in particular. If we just whack up the size in, like those ones in particular, I really like the detail level of those. I think they look really, really nice. My only complaint with them is I don't think they have a blend mode to them. Oops, accidentally renamed that. Mountains South, cool. And then we go into West. Mountains Desert should probably be this, and then Mountains Deadlands. There we go, that's better. So the problem with these mountains is they don't have a blend mode. So if I jump into the basic mountains, the brown mountains, these ones, I'll show you what I mean. If I click on these, there's an option for clip mask, and if I turn that off, you can see how it creates like these green areas that will turn off and they'll pick up the color from the land behind it. And it's a really useful way of blending the mountains into the map beneath it without having to change the color of the map beneath it. If we end up using these, what I think of as more detailed mountains, kind of forces you into using that color palette, whereas these are, because of the clipping mask, can blend a little nicer. So let's just have a look and see whether we've got some ground options which will blend with this. So let's start with a red wasteland. That is the water brush. I want land brush. I want to turn off the grid, and I want to just see what these look like on a bunch of different colors. So to get an idea of what sort of ground tone I want to be working with. So we're going much more like orange desert versus yellow desert here. If we go yellow desert, you can see they stick out a lot more, whereas these brown ones blend in much better. And I don't think that I want really orange desert. So if we go and grab the orange and kind of do a stripe test, we can grab this and we can switch out the hue and see whether that will help at all, whether we can force it to look how we want it to look without using a different stamp. And I'm not 100% sure we'll be able to do it, but it might be fine if we desaturate it a little bit. So we want to try and match it to the right one. So I want more yellow, and then drop the saturation, and then drop the brightness, bring the brightness up. Yeah, it's too much faffing around to get that to work. So we will stick with the main brown mountains. It's not a problem. It's just, I would have liked to have used those other mountains because I like the level of detail on them, but it's not worth the hassle of trying to blend them in. So we're going to go and delete that. And then make sure we're in the mountain desert area and make sure we've got our brown mountain selected. Change our scale to 20. That is the working scale that we've been using. And then what I've been doing is setting a kind of start point and then placing in just kind of anchor mountains along the route to be like, okay, here's where you need to fill in, so that I can delete or hide them and then paint in along the line. Just so I'm not looking at both versions of the mountain at the same time. Makes it just a little bit easier to go in and start painting in the mountains without looking at kind of both sets at the same time and getting really confused as to what is going on. And then when painting these like large forms of mountains, I like to kind of choose one through line. So for me, it will be this line here, like that. So these are kind of like the spines of my mountain. And then go in and all of these little side bits that I've added, kind of add thicker points. So we get some thickness around that central spine, which helps give the impression that you have a ridge running down your mountain, and you can change the size as well to help with this. So you could take a slightly larger mountain size for the ridgeline, which isn't an awful idea to do if we go and undo a bunch of that and make the center spines larger. Let's go and delete a bunch of them, and then we can select all of the center spines at once and just increase their size by like 5%. And then go back to our standard scale. So take this whole center spine, grab them all, change their scale to like 25, and then go back in and grab the size 20, and then put them on the side, and it helps give that illusion that you've got the one ridge line running through that is the largest peak, if you want that kind of style of, I don't know what kind of mountain range, like alpine style, where you've got the big like long ridges of mountains. And then for some of them I'll bring them out in like an arch like this and kind of fill them in, so it's not just like one size all the way. So you get some variation in the thickness. And then just add them in. Evening, Agile Monk, how are we? And then go ahead, grab all of those, turn off the clip mask so it actually blends in. And immediately that looks a whole bunch better. And then we can go in and start adding in smaller ones. So making sure we're still in the Mountains Desert. And Evening, Wild Wolf, how are we, folks? So then we want to grab these smaller brown mountains and start adding those in, and because they are different stamps, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to group all of those together. Group main mountains, just so that when we want to make any changes, it's much easier to get in there and do it. We are making mountains out of molehills. And then if we go ahead and go into our main mountains and grab just this one, because this one's sticking over the coastline. And then we can come out of the group. No, I don't want to be in the group anymore. There we go. Back out into the scene. And we want our smaller brown mountains. And then we want to start filling in these spaces. We want to make sure that the main mountains stay at the top. So we just change the layer here. Move up is what we want. Fine. We'll move you down if you don't want to be moved up, because we want the smaller mountains to appear behind the larger mountains, mainly so that if you see all of these little gaps between the large mountains, when we put the small mountains there, they fill up that space, and it helps make it feel like a denser range. And then we do the same with hills, and on and on and on, and then you just end up with an enormous range of mountains. So we'll do that for this mountain range. We'll end up doing that over time for the mountains that separate the desert from the verdant regions. We'll do a couple more small ranges, and then from there go through the whole map and add rivers and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that rather than spend the entire stream just placing mountains and doing that kind of stuff, let's go ahead and make sure that we're actually saving, so that I'm not going to lose all of that valuable process, because far too often that happens. And then we'll jump back into, either we can jump into some Legend Keeper stuff, or we can fire up Affinity and take a look at some of like the setting guide stuff and start getting a sense of how we're going to put that together as well. I'll show you, I have shown this off a couple of weeks ago. So that's all saved. So Publisher, or just Affinity now, isn't it? It's not Publisher, this is Affinity 3. So this is the work in progress for the setting guide. I have been building out little tidbits of it as I go, mainly been working on just kind of trade dress and visual vibes rather than any concrete information, because we don't really have a huge amount of concrete information yet, to try and get a sense of how this would look if it was a product. And also because I find that thinking of campaign settings in the frame of, if this was a product, how would it look, helps me know kind of what to make. So like if we jump into like a mock table of contents, filling out a mock table of contents for a campaign setting is a really useful tool to go, okay, what actual information should I be conveying to the players here? Like, okay, here's your introduction to the world. Well, what do they need to know about this at a high level kind of thing? Okay, they need to know that what this place is called, what the kind of big vibes of Sunscar is. At some point in the past, an enormous sky city exploded over it, and huge pieces fell to the earth and destroyed the previous civilization and created a whole bunch of magical anomalies, and now there's a bunch of Akmiri ruins in the form of these crashed pieces of Sky City scattered throughout the land. Cool. We need to define what the Akmiri is. We need to define the Cataclysm. We need to kind of define the magic surrounding that. And then going through that process again and again and again and again in terms of like table of contents thinking is a really useful way of understanding what key information you need to communicate to the players. Agile Monk says, what do you think of the new Affinity now that it has gone through the acquisition process and been newly deployed? It's taken me a little while to start using it properly, and I still find myself just by muscle memory opening up the older Affinity suite most of the time. Like quite a lot of the time, if I'm working on a new project, like something small, if like I want to make a new thumbnail or do something like that, I'll find myself opening Designer by default and then be like, no, use the new version of Affinity to get more used to it. But every time I do use the new Affinity, it's absolutely fine, and it is just like using the old one. I just still have that muscle memory of, oh, I'm doing this thing, open the old one. But I've managed to set up the new one so that it looks pretty much identical to the old one, and there's a lot of like little features that I like a lot about the new one, like having all three of the modes, vector, pixel, and layout, baked into one app and not having to open in either personas or opening the distinct programs separately is really nice. And I really like the kind of different export personas that they have is really nice as well. I just need to break out of the old muscle memory of using the old version of Affinity. So in terms of the vibes for the setting guide, pretty sure that we're going to go like black and white throughout, color on the cover but black and white throughout, just because I think that fits the vibe of the West Marches style really well. It gives it a kind of tonal identity of like being a little bit more grim and a little bit darker. And thinking forward to the future, if this is something that I'm going to make a product out of, it makes it cheaper to produce, which makes it cheaper for the end customer. It means that I can make, like, let's say this is a 200-page book, I can make it like significantly cheaper for folks to buy than like a big color book. And designing it black and white from the start means you can still make it beautiful. You just design it with intention. So a lot of the stuff that I've been doing with this has been like vibe exploration, like trying to figure out what we're doing with headings, and are we using drop caps, and like whether or not I want these little flourishes at the start of like the first paragraph of a page, just to add a little like visual flair as it goes out. Because if you're using black and white all the way throughout a book, it can get a little mundane and a little boring, you know, because you don't have those bright pops of color. And then seeing what some of the art that I would normally use would look like in black and white form, and playing with colors and like levels and things like that. One thing that I have been enjoying recently is these kind of splash chapter headings. So instead of just moving to a new chapter and starting it in text, having these bold statement art pieces to say, here is what the next chapter is. So here are the dangers in Sunscar, or here are the locations in Sunscar, and going with a full spread of art for that purpose. It's something that I started doing when I was working on a narrative campaign for Warhammer 40,000. So I want to run a narrative 40k campaign for my local group, and I started putting together a little campaign primer for that. I started doing splashes for the chapters for that, and I really enjoyed it. So I started carrying it through into other things. So I've been doing that, and then figuring out how a stat block's going to work in this format. So this is A5 rather than my usual kind of US letter A4 kind of size. But I think that as we go through the process of building out Sunscar and work on adding locations and things like that, I will be updating this document and building it out. So want to make sure that it covers kind of all of the principal biomes. So the Myrospires and the Verdant East and the desert and the Deadlands of Kar and the Frostbreak Mountains, all of those will get a section, get some descriptions of some of the locations in there. If this ends up becoming a product, I want to make sure that there are a bunch of kind of one-shot adventure kind of templates runnable within. So if I go ahead and just turn that off, if I put my face back on, so you're just looking at my face while I open the files, so you can't see the deep dark secrets in my PC, and figure out some of the kind of vibes that I want to put in terms of these, and then switch back to this and make sure that you're seeing the right thing properly. Yes, you are. So this is a little exploration that I worked on last month, a little micro adventure dungeon. It's called Dead Vengeance. The idea behind it is a roll fold leaflet dungeon, so a dungeon that will fit on two sides of an A4 sheet of paper that you can fold up like a leaflet and take and run at a convention or run for brand new players. And the whole goal for me when designing this was how can I most efficiently communicate the information that I want within an adventure through visual design. So like having the map on the back, but then having each room being its own distinct section, having icons to be like, okay, the main thing in this room, is it a piece of exploration, so it gets a magnifying glass? Is it a hazard, so it gets the little hazard symbol? Is it a door or a secret door, so it gets those symbols? Or is it a monster, so it gets the little skull icon? And how to communicate read aloud sections, like, so that they're very clearly something that you should be reading aloud, versus is this just a room description or something that I should be saying aloud to the players, and all of that kind of stuff. And if we do end up making a product of Sunscar, then I want to carry forward this kind of design language and put just a butt ton of dungeons and locations and adventures at the back of it. So I'd want like a couple dozen probably micro locations at the back of the book to be like, if you are running this place and you just need something to put in front of the players and you don't want to prep, like, here will be a big list of like places that will be in the world and some evocative descriptions of those places and what their whole vibe is for you to extrapolate out and make your own adventures. But if you don't want to do that, here is just a ton of sort of 2-page spread adventures that you could just run like straight away, because I think that is really important for a kind of West Marches style game, for it to be a super usable product. If it's going to be a product, then I think it should be inspirational. Someone should be able to pick it up and go, this is a region that sounds really cool. There's a lot to discover. There's a lot of intrigue and wonder and stuff that gets me excited as a dungeon master, and things that I think that I could run my players through and they'd be really excited about. But it should also have that like utility, so that you can just put it in front of the players and not have to do all of that brain work as the GM straight away. So that's definitely going to be something that, if this does end up becoming a product, which it probably will at some point, that I definitely want to include like really tight and succinct dungeons and locations to be run through. And then in terms of locations, if we jump back over to Legend Keeper, yes, Legend Keeper, we can start running through some of those. And what I will do is I will also open up my generator for locations that I've been working on for the last few weeks, and we'll build some of them out and do a little bit of that. So I need to open Google Sheets because Excel just hates interacting with OBS for some reason. And then open my GM toolkit and find my location generator. There we go. So if we switch back to that, so this is the Sunscar hex generator tab of my GM toolkit. So this is my personal copy of the GM toolkit, but the GM toolkit is something that you can pick up on my website. If I find the button, there's the button. So over on my website, there is a page for my newsletter. When you sign up for my newsletter, you get instant access to my GM toolkit. This is a spreadsheet that has a ton of different generators in there. It's got point of interest generators, settlement generators, dungeon generators, stuff for NPCs, and a whole new economy system for 5e, and it's got a quick monster builder in there, a whole bunch of stuff. I will also be updating it later this month, next month, depending on when the video goes out, to put my weird monster builder that like instantly generates a monster with a stat block and all of its interesting stuff. If we find it, the monster maker. So this will be getting added to the public version of the GM toolkit in the next couple weeks. So you define a CR and it will give you a monster. So a small beast-like ooze, a bestial ooze that has a number of mutations, so you might choose several mutations, or you can ignore them, and then it will give you traits. So this ooze has displacement, superior invisibility, and jinx. And then it gives you the stats based on its CR, and those stats are tied to the median for that CR, so it will be balanced to its given CR. So if we go ahead and we choose like a CR 11, we might get a large stone carved plant that might have like bat-like wings, and it gains a fly speed. And it might have the inscrutable trait, so no magic can observe the monster remotely or detect its thoughts without its permission. Well, why does this weird stone carved plant, one, have wings, and two, have the inscrutable trait? And answering those questions will give you weird and wonderful monsters. It's not what we're here for, though. We're here for the work in progress, Sunscar hex generator. So the purpose of this is, when we look at the map of Sunscar, every hex here, every 4-mile hex, I would like to have something in, and some of these are going to be specific locations. So some of them I know that there'll be a cave full of sturges, or there'll be a dungeon that at the end of it has a belt of giant strength, or an outpost that has been taken over by raiding goblins. But then some of the hexes in between these, like let's say this hex right here, I don't know what's going to be there. So a good way to determine what is going to be there is to come to the hex generator tool and just generate a hex. So let's refresh that. And this is going to be some kind of ruin, which has a moderate danger level, which has no cataclysm influence. Now, cataclysm influence is going to be weird magical stuff caused by the fact that this incredibly high magic tech Sky City crashed to the earth in this region, and that can have strange anomaly effects, but this one has none. Its visibility will be easy to see, so sometimes these will be hidden or secret. The reward value which will be there will be medium, and its situation is it's currently being exploited. So if we just copy those, so we've got those to hand, so we know it's a ruin. Then we go to our ruins section over here, and the ruin is an old world temple. So the region of Sunscar is kind of divided into 3 elements. We have the old world, which is the people that were here before the Akmiri Cataclysm, before the Sky City fell to earth and destroyed that civilization. Pieces of their civilization still exist. There are still ruined cities, old world temples scattered throughout the land, things like that. Then you have the Akmiri ruins, which fell to the earth. And then you have the kind of settlers elements, so the new people that have come to Sunscar to exploit all of the potential treasures of this land. Excuse me. So this is going to be an old world temple ruin. So we go ahead and click a pin there, and we'll go old world temple, and we want to link it to a page, create a link and make it synced with the page. And then this is going to be a point of interest, and we're going to change this to be, we'll keep it as the exclamation point for now, but I do want it to be a rounded pin, and I want it to be pink because that is my point of interest color. And then in our secret notes, we paste in the generated element of it. So it's ruins with, let's get both of them so I actually remember what they mean. So it is ruins with a moderate danger level, no cataclysm influence, it's easy to see, a medium reward value, and then is being exploited. I could do nothing else with that now, just leave that pin on the map for months until the players got into that hex or one of the surrounding hexes, until the players were close enough to that hex that it was reasonable that they might come across it and that I had to actually start preparing it. Then I need to think, right, okay, the danger level is moderate and it's currently being exploited. I need to figure out what those two things mean. What's it being exploited by? I look at my creature type option in here, and I can see that it's constructs. I can definitely zoom out on the map for sure. Do you want to see the whole thing? I can zoom out to the whole level. We're focused right in on this top corner here. Just focused on our little starting region at the moment as we explore the kind of options for generating like random hex stuff. So, creature type. This gives us some options for either what monster layers could be, or anytime we need to decide if there is an adversary or any kind of creature involved in our generation. In our example here, we know that this old world temple is being exploited by something. So what's it being exploited by? We get constructs. So we go back in here, being exploited, and we just put construct as our like little marker for how it's being exploited. And then future me, when the players would be close to that pin, I would look back on this and be like, right, okay, constructs are exploiting this old world temple. What does that mean? Is it Warforged? Is it Modrones? Is it something else entirely? Is it Akmiri constructs that have like woken up from a nearby facility and have come to like learn about the surrounding area and have come to a place of worship to try and get a sense of the world that they've woken up into? Is it something more sinister? And when it comes to like West Marches style play, the goal for me at least isn't to give myself huge amounts of upfront work and figure out every detail of every hex way in advance, but it's about giving future me enough of a like head start so that when the time comes, I've offloaded some of that mental overload. So when the time does come and I do start this and the players start in our little starting town here, I can look at all of the pins surrounding them, and no matter what direction they choose, past me has done a little bit of work to go, I've got you. Here's the kind of thing that's in this hex. Here's the direction that your prep needs to take. Cool, they're going to go to this old world temple. It's some ruins. You're going to need a ruin map. That's really easy to find or make. You're going to need some kind of construct. Now, I could either leave it there and let future me take care of that problem, or I just make myself a note and be like, right, okay, I decide what constructs they are. So, given that we are not terribly far from an Akmiri ruin, I'm going to say that a group of Akmiri constructs have awoken and are exploring the region, and they've come across an old world temple, and they are trying to discover more about the world that they've woken up into. And are trying to discover more about the world they have awoken to. And that is pretty much all I need, because future me can then take that and be like, cool, I need a ruins map, and I need to decide what like stat block to use for the constructs. And that will wildly depend on what level the players are when they come to this particular hex or to this region. But it's not something that I need to decide now. It just gives me a vibe for there is something here. It's an old world temple. It reinforces that this is a previously lived in civilization that has been destroyed. It reinforces the Akmiri connection of the broken sky city that's fallen to earth. It makes it feel like a vignette that has been pre-thought and pre-planned, and that the players can stumble into and explore. And because I've done enough work in this world in the past, like I'm very familiar with the wider world of Ishtar, the planet upon which my setting takes place, that's all I need to be able to improvise my way through a session then. Like, I don't need to know what the motivations are of these constructs beyond they just want to find out more about the world that they're in now. I would decide in the moment whether they're friendly or not friendly, because our like danger level indicator is moderate. It could go either way. There's no cataclysm influence, so there's no weird magic stuff happening. I don't need to contend with that. It makes it very easy to just put together what might end up being a very small vignette of the players arrive at this old world temple and see some strange robots and maybe have an interaction with them, or just watch them for a little bit and then move on. Not every kind of hex point of interest in a West Marches style world, in this open sandbox world, needs to be super rich and in-depth, because a lot of the juice for the players, a lot of what motivates them is going to be going out and exploring and finding these different things and trying to get like lots of different things, lots of different experiences. Total Wargaming says, what's the purpose of the visibility column? Do you not let players see the temple if they don't make the DC? That is correct. So, given that this is a West Marches style game, it's important for me to have multiple groups be able to travel through the same location and have different experiences. So, if we had Group A move through this region and like only roll 6 on their perception, they wouldn't see this temple. But Group B might go through the next week, roll an 8 and be like, hey, we went through that place that you went through and we found this temple. And then Group A is like, oh, we missed that. And that immediately signals to everyone, both the players that missed the interaction and the players that had the interaction, that those perception checks really do matter. Like, if you miss something, you will miss it, and there is stuff to miss. It means that it builds that sense of like exploration and hidden stuff and wonder to the players. It also gives us as the GM a little bit of get out of jail free to be like, oh, make a perception check when you're in this hex. And if you've got nothing in the hex, you can just be like, you don't find anything. And the players, after a time, will be like, whatever's here must be so hidden. And that hex might just be empty, but it helps buy you that kind of facade of the world feeling more real. And it's just one of those useful GM tools. Do you give them a single roll? What are the mechanical interactions for that? Like, I've never run West Matches before. I'm not 100% sure of how I will mechanize it when it comes to it, whether it will be a single roll. I imagine at the moment the way that I'm leaning towards is that when it comes to scheduling, the person that has kind of taken it upon themselves to be like, I want to put together a group to go out and do this thing, because a lot of the West Marches style of play is very player driven. So like player 1 will go, hey guys, I want to go out in an adventure. I am free on Friday night. Is everyone else free? And we've heard rumors of this dungeon that has a rest monster in it to the west. I'd really like to go and try and find it and tackle that. Does anyone want to get together for that? And the way I'm currently thinking of it is the kind of player that has rallied the troops for the session becomes kind of like the de facto group leader for the session. And when there is like a role to be made, that player is kind of the one responsible for it, or responsible for the delegation of it. So either the group leader would make the perception roll, or they'd be the one to be like, okay, I'm going to delegate our perception rolls to the evening to the party druid or the party ranger, someone with higher perception than me. But a lot of it nearly fell. A lot of it would be on the shoulders of the person mustering the party, to try and reinforce that element to the players of a lot of this is in your hands. We'll play when you want to play, provided, I have to be free as the GM, but I'm not going to chase you to play. You have to come to me and be like, I want to get a group together. Are people free on this night? And one of the ways that I like to kind of encourage that is that sort of group leader element. It's something that we have used in our non-West Marches games before. So in our just standard play for a decent period of time, actually, each week we would just nominate a group leader or rotate a group leader and be like, right, if there are big decisions to be made tonight, you are the person that will be either the decider, the kind of swing vote, or you are solely responsible for dictating the direction of the session. And it helps put a bit more agency into each individual player. And it also means that they kind of make decisions faster, because decision paralysis and that kind of decision by committee, oh my god, that can slow play down so much. So having a dedicated group leader can be so useful, and that's something that I am very interested in incorporating into the kind of West Marches mechanics of the scheduling of play. But whether or not the group leader will be the one to do the visibility role, or whether they'll offload that to whoever's like scouting the specifics of that, not 100% sure. But I like the idea of two groups being able to move through the same space and not necessarily see the same thing. Because even though these hexes are only like 4 miles, are still a big area, you know. It's entirely possible to go through that area and not see the Old World Temple. So let's go ahead and see if we can get a couple more interesting pulls from this. Why are you defaulting to ruins every time? Let me make sure that you're... Yeah, you shouldn't be. Let's re-roll until... There we go. So this option is tracks/clues. So this is a pure investigation option, but with extreme danger level, which is very, very interesting. With no cataclysm influence, very easy to see, no low reward value, and then trapped or hazardous situation. So this is a really interesting pull from the generator, because it is very unlike what we've just had. So previously, that Old World Temple is a fixed point, it's a ruin, it's a tangible location with an inbuilt story straight away, whereas this is much more nebulous. You might have to work harder to get a result that could be interesting from this. But so tracks and clues, immediately I'm like, could be a monster. The danger level being extreme pushes me towards it being a monster, that you are wandering through this hex and you come across the tracks of a very dangerous monster. Evidence that there is some kind of very dangerous, in relation to your level, monster operating in this hex or near to this hex. There's no cataclysm influence, so we don't have to worry about that for this one. Them being easy to see leads me more towards them being a larger creature versus like a very small creature. Because if we're thinking of it in terms of tracks, the bigger the track, the easier to see. You know, if it was a tiny creature, picking that out among the wilderness might be very hard. It being a low reward value immediately leans towards me thinking that it's going to be a beast, a monstrosity, something that doesn't wear equipment or anything like that, something that has no use for stuff. So the only reward you would get would be on the bodies of its victims. And then the situation being trapped or hazardous is interesting, because that leads me to it being maybe an intelligent beast or similar, like a kind of creature that could be setting traps, or it's hazardous because actually you found tracks, but this creature might be hunting you. And there are a couple of different options already on the map for that. There's a predator beast specifically is what I'm thinking of. I've already made a note on here that some big cat or wolf or bear, something suitable for level 1 play, would be ideal for this. So you see like a huge like bear-like paw print, and the players think that they're tracking a monster, and the monster is actually tracking them and is leading them into some kind of trap. Would be ideal for that. Let's go ahead and give it another spin. Ooh, this one's cool. So a high danger level ruin with a reality breaking anomaly, which is hidden or secret, which has medium reward value and is contested. So the ruin is an Akmiri facility, which works really well for a reality breaking anomaly, having that Akmiri connection. And then monstrosities are the creature type associated with it. So some reality breaking anomaly within the ruins of an Akmiri facility. So Akmiri facilities will have been these magical and technological, like scientific facilities where they would have done experiments or worked on new like science or tech or magic. And this one probably was working on something that has broken reality in some way. So for broken reality, I think that a good place to start to see for inspiration of broken reality is looking at particularly high level spells. So if we go and we look at spells of 8th and 9th level specifically, and have a look at what in that list of spells could work for a reality breaking effect to apply to a monster encounter, or to give a monster or something like that. So something like, what's incendiary cloud? A swirling cloud of embers, range is heavily obscured. So basically a swirling cloud of fire. That's an option, not quite reality bending. Mind blank would be funny. Until the spell ends, one willing creature you touch has immunity to psychic damage and the charmed condition, and affected by anything that would sense its emotions, read its thoughts. Mind blank, for some reason I thought it was alter memories. I'm not even sure if alter memory is a thing in 5th edition. I can't remember. Time stop is always a good shout for like reality bending stuff. Same with prismatic wall, having like a part of the facility that is like emitting a prismatic wall. Very cool. And I think that should be the one. So let's go, and we've got an Akmiri ruin placed on the map already. So we've got our location. So we'll go ahead and create a new pin to replace that, because Akmiri ruin is like a generic pin that I can just drag anywhere to be like, there is an Akmiri ruin here. So for this, we're just going to call it the prismatic ruin. Or we are if we can type. Link to page, create and link, sync with page, and then go into this. And this is going to be a point of interest. I'm going to change this to the spaceship symbol, because that is the symbol I use for Akmiri stuff. And then we're going to change it to be a golden shield, because that's what I use to be like, at a glance, this is Akmiri stuff. So if I zoom out, I can look at them and be like, Akmiri, 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 Akmiri. I do need to change the shape of the Womb of Elsewhere, because it is not Akmiri, it is just generic magic. So the circular golden stuff is, this is magical, and the shield based golden stuff is, this is Akmiri. And it helps, not so much now, but the further we get in this process, once we start getting hundreds of pins on this map, being able to identify pin type at a glance, super valuable. So we have our prismatic ruin. And we want to make a note that somewhere in this ruin there is a prismatic wall, which we will link. Going bananas. And then we'll link prismatic wall as... why do you not want to... There we go. So this gives future me the option to be like, right, okay, so this is an Acmiri facility, high danger level, with a reality breaking anomaly, which is the prismatic wall. It is hidden, so it'll be hard to find. It's only got a medium reward value and it is contested. So why does it only have a medium reward value? Because it is contested. Someone is in the process or has been here kind of taking stuff out of it. Now, I don't think monstrosity is a great pick for this. I think that we should be looking at things like the humanoids, maybe undead, fiendish, maybe a dragon, something with a little bit more sentient intelligence as the option here. So we're just going to refresh the page and see what we get as the pull. A fey creature is looting this place. So we put fey here. So when we come back round in the future to populate in this and the surrounding hexes, we go, right, okay, there is an Acmiri facility here in these ruins. The danger is high, both because there is this prismatic wall that is part of the terrain of the environment, but also because some type of fey creature, which in 5.5, remember, can include goblins and hobgoblins and a lot of those, what would have traditionally been goblinoids, are looting this place. They're in active looting. So I'm just going to put looting in brackets, which is why the reward value is medium, because it is partially looted. And that immediately gives us a story for this session. Players arrive at this really interesting place. It's hidden, it's secret. They might have passed through this hex dozens of times before finally finding it. They go down in there. There's weird magic stuff happening that they might not even comprehend because they're, level 2 or 3. This might be the first time some of these players have ever seen prismatic wall. And there's all this strange stuff happening. They're suddenly going blind and taking all this damage. And maybe they've got retainers with them that are getting disintegrated by the wall. All the while, some fey creatures are hauling the loot out of there. And the story that they take back to town with them is then either, oh, we had to fight for our lives to escape from this weird, bonkers Acmiri facility where there's all of this treasure maybe hidden behind the prismatic wall. Or we defeated all of these fey creatures to loot this ancient facility, and only 6 of our retainers got turned into weird, gribbly monsters by the prismatic wall. And it again means that I will have to do comparatively very little prep on the day for that adventure. So if the players are like, right, okay, we're just making a beeline north, and I know that they're likely to go into that hex, again, I just need a map and a couple of monster stat blocks. And then when it comes to the rewards, I would go into my GM toolkit. I know it's a medium value reward, so I'd go into the Dungeonomics tab. I'd go into their appropriate level. So let's say they're level 3 at the time. It's a medium value reward, so something to the value of 41 gold pieces per player, whatever the size of the party is, and that gives me my gold value for the reward. Or I can do it based on the table here. So they're level 3. Their gold per session should be around 41. And it makes it very easy to be able to populate the world, run the world, adjust adventures, give rewards without having to do heaps of prep, because that kind of week to week, session to session, feeling like you're spending 5 hours doing prep before you ever roll the dice can be really exhausting. I love the narrative, story-driven campaign, but it is one of the downsides of that kind of campaign is that once you kind of get into the weeds with it, once you're 40, 50 sessions in and you're really into the meat of the story, it can be quite hard to just really quickly put something together because you've got a lot of baggage, narrative baggage going on, which is one of the things that I really am attracted to about the West Marches, is that like every week, every session gets to be a blank slate of you're just going to go here and experience what you experience, and what you experience is what is on the map. And broadly speaking, the kind of broad strokes, the high level kind of macro of what you're going to experience is something that I've thought about like 18 months before, and now present me just has to fill in the specific mechanical details, which will go very, very fast. If folks have questions about like this specific approach to like campaign design and things like that, or anything else, throw them in the chat while I hydrate. And then we'll do another pull on the generator and see what we get. So this one is going to be another secret, but it's going to be a landmark this time, and the landmark is going to be an old world battlefield. So this is an old world battlefield that is for some reason secret or hidden, which to me says it's going to be inside another like terrain feature, so inside like a mountain range, or nested in a valley, or under a lake, or inside a forest. It's not just out in the wilderness, out in the plains. But the situation is that it is corrupted or influenced, and that I think is very interesting. So for that, I like the idea if we have a look over on the map of Sunscar in Incarnate, and try and get a sense of where there might be something. We'll just choose a random hex for this, and this will be one that will almost certainly move once the terrain has been placed, because I'll probably put this like I say, inside a forest is my first thought of where this would go. But corrupted battlefield, is that how you spell battlefield? Yes, it is. No use setting that yet. We want to create a link and link that. We want to make it a point of interest and then change it to be pink. And then it is a landmark, which is an old world battlefield. And then what has it been corrupted by? So monstrosity is the pick that the generator has given us. When I think of corruption, I think of fiendish creatures, so devils, demons, etc. And I think that demons are the one, because I really like demons in my setting, because they are tied to sin, and they are not just like the kind of typical demons in D&D. Demons in my setting are born of like those base sins, and they corrupt is like their whole deal. So there being some kind of corruption in this battlefield, and maybe it being a wrath demon that has turned this battlefield from what would have been like a skirmish into like a massacre, or something similar. That is probably what I would go with. So a wrath demon has taken root here turning what would have been a minor skirmish into a massacre. Then the specifics, again, don't really matter right now, other than that it is old world, so this would be ancient, so this would be a very old demon, so probably very dangerous, which might mean that we want to make a little note that this is going to be really, really dangerous, above the level that might be appropriate for this region. This might be something the players have to come back to. An easy way to mark that is go Witcher style, put a little skull on it, so that when we hover over it, we're like, okay, that is a particularly dangerous place. If I zoom out, we can go and we can do the same to the Shadow of the Colossus. Its icon is already a skull because it is a monster, but using the skull emoji to denote that a pin is particularly dangerous for the level of the region that it's in is another quick accessibility tool for me as the DM to be able to look at the map and go, right, the players are near this location. Hover over it. Oh, cool. That's a corrupted battlefield. If they're going there, they're going to have a bad time. And having a bad time is just part and parcel of the West Marches experience sometimes. Sometimes you'll come across a place that is too high level for your players, that is too dangerous for your players, and you will need to run, and if you don't run, your characters will die, and that is just something that the players have to learn. And it's something that I will communicate in session zeros, and it's something I will reinforce the first couple times that they get themselves into dangerous situations that are manageable. I won't wait until they're in the corrupted battlefield to be like, you should probably run. But I will reinforce multiple times before that if the balance of battle starts to swing against them, don't forget, running is an option. You can live to fight another day. You can come back. You can gather a larger party, come back and deal with this, etc., etc. Because they should get the impression that this is the world doesn't care about them, and sometimes they'll come across a place that exists independently of them, and they might just have to wait and come back to it. And it's a mindset shift from more narrative, linear storytelling style of D&D. But once you kind of make that shift, it becomes a fun part of it, because you're like, oh, cool, let's put a pin in that and go and do a training montage. And eventually we're going to come back and we're going to see what really cool stuff is there. How are we doing for time? 20 past 8. Yeah, we can do one or two more generators and see if we can get some cool stuff going down. So you'll notice that this generator is giving us a whole bunch of ruins. And I don't know whether it's just because in Google Sheets it's not properly rolling, because it should be giving us a nice mix of options, but it does seem to be defaulting to the same kind of one or two options really frequently. It's given us monstrosity as a creature type way too many times for how often monstrosity appears. Monstrosity is there 3 out of 20 times, and it's been the most frequent pull. So I think it's just that Google Sheets doesn't like the random, the kind of index and rand between option, which is fine because we can manually dice roll it. I've got a dice roller built into my Stream Deck, so it is a D36, so 2d6 I think is what I want. So 41. That's not right. It would be, but I don't have the numbers next to it. That's fine. Roll D36. No, not 26, 36. God damn it. There we go. Of course you're going to give us ruins. Stupid Google. Do not be doing this to me. Give us a big number. There we go, 24. Crikey. So 24 is a creature lair. That took way too much effort to get. So, an extreme danger creature lair with a minor magical anomaly that is hidden, low reward value, and is unstable as its like situation. So, obviously it's going to be unstable if it's undergoing a minor magical anomaly. In terms of the creature type, we'll roll a d20, and that gets us a 7. So let's go ahead and put down our creature lair here. Creature lair. And this is going to be a monster. Monster. There we go. So, our monster, and then we'll grab this so that we know what it was. And put that in there, and then change that to be the appropriate color. And the discovery is a creature lair. And then because it has minor magical anomaly in the Cataclysm influence, that to me says this should be the lair of a creature with a mutation. So this should be a generated creature from the monster generator instead of being a monster manual creature. So we go over to the Monster Maker tab, and this is in the like CR1 to 4 region. It's quite close to the starting place. So if we imagine this whole peninsula would be like CR1, and then expand out like CR2 and 3 and 4 as we like radius out. So let's go ahead and make the CR2 like a decent fight for a level 1 party. Like it could be a solo monster. So a small bestial dragon. Cool. Now, immediately as an experienced GM, looking at that, I can see that greater magic resistance is too powerful for a CR2. The traits aren't bracketed to CR, so I know that that's not something that I want. So I'm gonna do a new pull on that. So a medium insectoid with bone plating, tentacles instead of arms, silver abhorrence, acid absorption, the ability to gnash a grappled creature, and no reactions. This is much more reasonable. This is kind of in Ankheg territory, actually. So I actually think I want something weirder. A fungal plant with bark-like skin and eyes on stalks. I like that. We'd ignore the bat-like wings. With a fear aura and fairy fire. Cool. That one I can work with. So we grab the whole sheet there and we paste it in. We replace the limb mutation with none. I'm happy to keep the eyes on stalks and the bark-like skin. It's immune to frightened because it has a fear aura. That's not why it's immune to frightened. Like that is just a random chance. It's pulled a random immunity. It's immune. It's pulled frightened, but as it happens, it has a fear aura, so that works well that it's immune to frightened. It has no vulnerabilities or immunities, and it is not resistant to any damages, but it is resistant to magic, which is very powerful. So this is a creature that probably would actually be quite dangerous. So we're gonna drop a skull on it, and it is going to be a nightmare plant. Nightmare fungus plant. So as we look through it, it is going to be a large fungal plant. So I'm thinking like the Resident Evil style monsters, and that immediately leads me in a direction. Resident Evil style fungal plant monster, and then can create mobs ? So I'm thinking the Mega Mycelium from Resi 7 and 8 specifically, being able to create those like blobby fungus monsters. That could be cool. To use zombies as the stat block for them, because zombies is a good like summoned stat block if you in CR1 play. You just drop the undead fortitude from it and it works really well. So this thing has treasure as its relics as its treasure, but it has low reward value here. So a common relic maybe as its reward. We'd get the stat block straight away. It'd be quite slow. I'm imagining this thing would be like vined in. Resistant to magic, resistant, like immune to being frightened, has slightly higher than its median AC, very perceptive, maybe lots of little tendrils of fungus which like poke out from the ground and kind of announce its presence ahead of time. Very Resident Evil style. Then it has a fear aura, and then the fairy fire element of it I may drop, depending on what the party composition is. But again, this combination of generators is going to be so useful as we go through this process of building out Sunscar, because this is not a finished generator. You know, everything isn't fully fleshed out in it. Like, I don't have all of the landmarks that I want to have. I want to get some more landmarks in there. I want to get some more options for each of the entries so that when it gives you a generation, you have more unique options in there. It's like in the ruins, you've got a bunch of different Akmirian old world varietals, but I want more options. But already it's proven very useful for populating the map. And as we go through the process of building out Sunscar and putting in, you know, potentially hundreds of pins, this is only going to get more and more useful. How are we doing for time? 8:30. So I think that is a pretty decent place to call it for the evening. So what we'll do is, if you have questions or anything, throw them down in the comments. We'll spend like 5-10 minutes answering anything that you want to know down in the chat. While I hydrate and press all of my buttons and do my shilling for the evening. So, if you want to follow the progress of building out Sunscar, I'm going to be doing this in live streams pretty much every week, or as close to every week as I can, health permitting. I tend to be online every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. UK time. That is the goal. You can watch the live stream VODs here on the channel. There is a playlist for Sunscar specifically where all of the live stream VODs will go. But then there will also be, I don't know if I have a button for it. I don't have a button for it, but if I switch to this, I've got the little ad down here. Channel members are going to get extra videos dedicated to Sunscar as we go on, as I have more like in-depth things to say. Those will go out specifically to channel members versus the wider channel. The main channel might get some Sunscar videos. Like, I think that there will be the map making video will probably go out as a main channel video. because map making videos tend to do quite well, but a lot of the more niche things will probably go out as members only videos. So if you're interested in like world building deep dives, channel memberships are a great way to get a lot more of that content and help support the channel. Like, would not still be doing this without member support. Total Wargaming asks, can Legend Keeper export as a markdown? Yes, it can. So if we switch back over, you go up to the little Legend Keeper icon, you hit export, and then you get a bunch of different format options. So you can export it as a Legend Keeper file, as HTML, as markdown, as just one big markdown file, or as JSON data. And the import export is really useful in Legend Keeper. This particular, let me grab a simpler, let's go and Sunscar. Let's go into this specific page and export this individual page as HTML, and then see what happens when you open that. So there we go. So this is the HTML exported version of this page. So you can see the formatting is a little bit weird, obviously because this is designed with the formatting of Legend Keeper in mind, and the HTML doesn't necessarily keep that formatting, but it keeps all of the important stuff. It keeps the images, it keeps all of the text in a way that can be copied. It keeps your secrets, it keeps your links in clickable form. And I'm 99.99% sure that even if you cancel your Legend Keeper subscription, you can still log in and download all your projects in whatever format you want. So you don't have to keep an active subscription to be able to access your data. So you can build your stuff out in Legend Keeper, and if you decide that you don't want to carry on your subscription, export it all out in your format of choice and bring it somewhere else, which is really nice. Like the not gatekeeping of your data has been a thing that Legend Keeper has done the whole time. They've always been like, your data is yours, like export it however you want, keep it however you want, which is, you know, should just be the bare minimum, but it is nice to see. In terms of other, what's the word? Like, in terms of other shilling of my own stuff that I want to do, I'm going to drop the link to my website again, specifically for my email newsletter. So when you sign up for that, you get that spreadsheet, the GM toolkit, and then every month I send out free 5e content, so predominantly monsters. This month is going to be the update to the GM toolkit that will have the monster builder, the new weird monster builder in that, and then I also have my drive-through-RPG. If you would prefer to get your PDF stuff on drive-through-RPG, you can get it all on my website, but the option is also there on drive-through-RPG. Total Wargaming says, did you stitch together Ishtar Islands, or was that all Incarnate? So all of Ishtar is done in Incarnate. So if we World of Ishtar, that's what I want. So this version of the map was all made in Incarnate based on various versions that have existed for years at this point. So if I load up one of my earliest versions, and we can have a look and see how it has changed over the years. So will this open in the browser? So this is a version from 2020, and you can see that if we grab the fancy version, it's very similar, but a lot of the places are different in different places. So Talavar is a similar shape. It's got that kind of jutting area for the Howling Badlands and the peninsula, but you can see places have moved around, like Sengal has changed locations several times. Akmiri has moved a couple times. Arsina has completely changed multiple times. So this was the version that existed in 2020, built in part from a bunch of different maps through the years, and some, I think it was like a large scale world view of an Azagar's generation. But it all started from, if I can find it, so the very first map that I made for the world came from the region of Valeroth, which is this one here. So this existed as its own map, which I'm just trying to find on my PC, as the oldest version of it anyway. There we go. That is the oldest version that exists on my PC. So this was the very, very first map for my very first campaign, which is Valeroth here. And then if we go onto the world of Ishtar, you can see here it is post that part of the campaign, because at the end of the campaign the players accidentally blew the country up. And this map changed and evolved over time, most notably getting blown up. And then it became part of a larger continent and eventually a larger world. And things have moved around and changed and expanded and contracted. And what I always say to the players is that the map that they're seeing is always kind of the in-world version of the best available knowledge that the people in the world have. So this map represents the map of the known world of Ishtar. And part of the reason why this ocean is the Endless Ocean is when you project this map onto a globe, one whole hemisphere is just water. And the big reason for that is because it gives me the scope to be like, well, on the dark side of the planet, on this other side of the world, is all of this other stuff that no one has actually discovered yet. And it gives me the freedom to add and remove and change things as is necessary, because obviously the people of the world aren't seeing things in satellite like a map projects, like we are used to in Google Maps style. They're basing their mapping on ancient techniques, which, if you've ever seen, a lot of the old maps are wildly inaccurate. So it helps to be able to be like, this is the best current knowledge of the world that the people that you are interacting with have. It is not like one-to-one perfect. And it'll be a big part of the reason why, like, you know, the Sunscar on the world map currently looks like this, but when you zoom into it, it's a completely different shape. There's a built-in narrative for that. The main reason is because as I started mapping it, I was like, this looks too much like Japan. I need to change the shape of it. But the inbuilt narrative for that is that no one has been to this island successfully for centuries, because the waters surrounding it are filled with gribbly monsters from the womb of elsewhere, which just destroy any of the ships that get too close. And it's only very recently, in the last like maybe decade or so, maybe 2 decades, that they found this like small little portion of coastline that is safe to make landfall, build a town, actually start to inhabit this island and start to map it. Before that, they were just like, well, we know it's vaguely this shape, so that's how it'll appear on the map. And that kind of, the closer you get, the more detail you get, and the further away, the more zoomed out you get, the more abstract the map gets. It's been really helpful. Like, well, the map is going to change every time we start a new campaign, because every time we start a new campaign, I go in and I make little tweaks. It's just part and parcel of playing in the same world for so long. You know, things change, things move. but my players never really question it. Like if we go back into the Jewel Cities, down here, is it down here? Yeah, down here, there is the city of Valastra. That used to be a completely different city, and then the party TPK'd, accidentally like released a crazed Akmiri from this interdimensional prison who had like delusions of being a god. He killed them all, has broken out, and then once they started with new characters, this place has been renamed because he has broken out, has set up shop in this town, and is starting to like amass a cult following, starting to like develop power, join in the Pantheon, is becoming like a thing. But the new characters have got no reason to know that, so it's just that city has been renamed, and as far as everyone in the world knows, it's always been called that. But the players, if they look at it, would be like, wait, that city is not the same as it used to be, but they've had no reason to because they've not been in this area of the world with their new characters. So like a little narrative gaslighting between friends, it can be fun sometimes, you know? If anyone's got anything else they want to know about, throw it down in the chat while I hydrate, and then if not, we will call it there for the evening. So as I say, I'm going to try and do this again next Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel, and then every Sunday until the heat death of the universe. Probably, I say next Sunday, I need to check my calendar because I actually think next Sunday is a no-go and I can't actually do next Sunday. I'm going to check that right now. Calendar. It is next Sunday. Cool. So there will be no stream next Sunday. But after next Sunday, Sundays. 7 p.m. UK time. And then, like I said, VODs will be on the channel, and as and when I have more substantial, in-depth things to say, chances are those will be members videos. The map making stuff will be like free videos on the channel, mainline channel videos. And then once we get much further in the process, like once we're in the kind of like stages where there's like a real setting guide or like enough stuff in Sunscar for me to like put together a public channel video, I'll probably do that. But up until then, it'll be live streams, the VODs, and members only content. But I hope you've enjoyed hanging out and get inspiration for all of your world building goodness. But until next time, happy gaming.